lesson. So far, guys, we've been looking at finance and growth. And we looked at a range of concepts under finance and growth. We started with looking at, in general, what does it mean to have growth? And then we spoke about growth in the context of mathematics and finance. And then we looked at different types of growth that we're going to deal with. Now, today we're going to actually look at the concept of savings. Savings will be you putting away money such that it grows some profit. It might be on a simple interest, on a compound interest, or just on a random interest. So we're going to be looking at all of that in this particular lesson. So let's just jump right into it. Stay tuned. Now, remember that our big concept is savings. So far, I want you to think about how some people are successful. So what makes them successful? When you talk about successful, we're talking in terms of finances. How are people living off with proper finances and not maybe trying to meet ends meet? And also, how would you then like to manage your money? If you were to be given $1 million right now, maybe you win lottery or something, what would you do? How would you manage that particular amount of money that you would have been given? So those are the questions that I need to be at the back of your brain as we are busy with this particular presentation. Now remember, our concept map has been the big idea being the growth, and we looked at different types of representing growth, be it in patterns, in graphs, and in equations. And then we looked at our context. Remember, context had to do with society, and it also had to do with finance. Society, it's the normal things that we are seeing. Our trees are growing, grass is growing, and also we looked at finance. Finance is what we are now actually talking about under the concept of patterns. Remember that with patterns, we have 3 types of patterns that we're dealing with under growth. It's the simple, the compound, and the random. In this particular one, we're going to start by revising what simple growth is about. Now, keywords of simple growth include, we measure change that is constant. So remember, when you talk about change that is constant, we are talking about if you are getting 20 rands on your investment or on your savings account, you will be getting 20 rands each and every year. Because remember, simple growth is about a yearly profit that you are getting into your investment. And also, this forms what we call an arithmetic pattern, which I believe that you guys are very familiar with this. And then it then comes to a linear equation and also a linear graph. When you talk about a linear graph, you can't have a graph that goes up, down, and it is curving or something like that. It's normally just a straight up graph or a straight down graph if maybe you are making a loss. And then even with the equation, since it's a linear graph, the equation will also be a linear equation. Now the equation to calculate simple interest, which you know about, will be A is equals to P, which is the principal amount, into 1 plus I multiplied by N. So remember that simple interest is on a yearly basis. So we're not going to talk about how often you are getting interest. The number of years is how often you get your interest, as opposed to if we talk about compound growth. Now, the second pattern that we're going to actually quickly revise is compound growth. So remember, compound growth is about a change that is not constant. The rate of change is also not constant, meaning we are talking about our gradient. Remember, we spoke about gradient here, that this would not really have a gradient. It forms what we call a geometric pattern, and also it forms an exponential graph and equation. Now we need to look at the equation to actually calculate some compound growth when we are given things. So you know that it is A is equals to P into 1 plus I, all to the exponent of N. Now, what I want you guys to understand so far is, when we talk about growth, we're talking about something being from a small portion to it being a bigger portion. Remember our big question: how are some people successful? How do you manage your money? Do you just only want your money to go out, or do you want your money to stay while you are using it as well, or do you want it to work for you, or do you want to work for your money? So those are the things that you need to be thinking about, especially when we come to financial maths. Because remember, financial maths is not just about the numbers that you are doing in maths. It's about real life things, to say, how are you managing your money? And remember, if you want money, you must make sure that you have a plan in place, because if you don't have a plan in place, then if I give you 100 Rand right now and you don't have a plan for it, definitely if I give you 1,000 Rand, you will not have a plan for it. And if I give you 10,000, you will actually not even have a clue on what to do, and you will waste that money. So that's the big idea that we are trying to look at here, to say, if you need money, make sure you have a plan for it. Let's just continue with what you are doing. So with savings, guys, you need to follow a plan regularly. When you talk about following a plan regularly, there's different challenges that you can follow here. It can be a challenge of saving maybe 1 Rand a day. It can be a challenge of saving 10 Rands a week. It can be a challenge of saving even 10 cents, just so that you can get into the habit of saving. And remember, all of this does not constitute as financial advice. It's just us talking numbers and mathematics, which is the big thing that the people who are financial advisors and all would also still tell you about the number. So you need a plan that you need to follow regularly, because remember, saving is about discipline. If you have 20 Rands, do you want to use the whole 20 Rands? If you have 30 Rands, do you want to use the whole 30 Rands? That's the plan that we are talking about. Do you even go a day without spending a cent? Depending on whether you do have money or you don't, it doesn't really matter. But do you just go a day without spending money? So those are the plans that we are talking about, to say, if maybe you want to buy coffee every day, is that really a good plan? Or can you maybe buy it every second day or something? You see, so this is the big idea here, that you must have a plan that you're going to follow regularly, and then alter it now and again for it to work for you as your situations are changing. Because remember, at times it might be holidays, meaning you're no longer getting an allowance, so the plan must change a bit. It might be school days where you are getting an allowance, the plan must be different. So you must have a plan that you're going to always alter depending on the situation at that time. Also, you need to select an appropriate type of investment. When you talk about types of investments, guys, we're talking about the things that will make money for you. Make money for you, meaning if I have 100 Rands, I need to think about a type of investment that maybe will double my 100 Rand. And those are a number of ideas. It can be you maybe stocking up some muffins, selling the muffins. It's an investment on its own. Or it can be the big idea here, which is savings. You go to a bank or a financial institution and say, guys, I have this much. How much interest can I get on that? And what type of interest can I get? Will it be simple or will it be compound? Then, now the big idea under savings is the term of your savings. Guys, the longer you invest, the more money you get. Whether it's simple interest or compound interest. Yes, there are differences between the two, but even in both of them, the longer you put your money away, the more money you get it. So the other thing is, take a long-term view. So you don't look at, I just want to save the 100 Rand to use in December. Most likely it will be 105 Rand that you will have there. So as a result, the longer you save for, the more interest you are going to earn on your money. So the goal here is to look at a long-term view, to say, am I trying to save up just so that I can buy maybe myself sneakers at the end of the year, or am I saving because I'm trying to live off well when I start university, or I want maybe when I start my first job I will have a startup money for me to start my job after studying all those years, or do I just want to save up just so that maybe I can have a good December and buy myself gifts and all of that. So those are things that you need to be thinking about whenever you are going into the concept of savings. Now, the big idea in all of this that we've spoken about is savings. What does it mean? How do you want to manage your money? And if you look at all these books that we are reading about the successful people that are worth billions right now, their net worth is millions and billions. How exactly did they get there? Did they just have them because it happened that they had that amount of money? Or did they put things in place that actually grew their 1,000 rand into 5,000 and their 5,000 rand into maybe 11,000 and their 11,000 into the billions that they're now worth? So those are the things that you need to be thinking about. But for now, that's all I'm just going to leave you with. Let's go to a quick ad break and we'll be back with some more. Hi guys, welcome back. So we are still on the concept of saving. Remember, the big idea here or the big question to you is, how are some people successful? Have you ever even given that a thought? Also, how do you then want to manage your money? And I made a scenario to say, let's say right now you win 10,000 rands, maybe on a certain competition that they are playing, maybe on radio or somewhere, any competition for that matter. At school, you have a competition and you win 5,000 or 10,000. How would you manage that 10,000? Have you ever given that a thought? Or I will just say it as it comes. Is it one of those things? Because really, really, you need to know what is it that you're going to do with your money. Whether it is 10,000, whether it's 5,000, whether it's just 500, you definitely need to know what you're going to do with your money. So that's one of the things that I need you to be thinking about as we are continuing. Right now, we're going to then look at a few options of what it means to save. And we're going to look at some calculations just to see what it means when somebody says, I am saving money. And then also think about how do we then determine what is it that is going to be their payout after a certain duration of time. So let's just jump right into it. Now, our big idea, remember, is still growth. We're still looking at patterns. And with our patterns, we're looking at simple, compound, and random. Now, one thing that you also need to be thinking about is how you can identify what equation to use when answering a question on savings. So when the question is being given to you in terms of savings, how do you then determine which formula or which equation to use? What are the key words? Like, for example, if I say to you, I'm opening an investment account and I'm depositing a fixed amount of money of 10,000, and the interest is given to me as 10% per annum, and I leave it there. What does that tell you? How can you then analyze that and scaffold that question such that it tells you which formula to use? That's what I'm asking you here. Also, these keywords that we are looking for, what exactly are they? So for example, things like if they mention simple interest, does that give you a clue? When they mention compound interest, does that give you a clue? When they mention things like inflation, does that give you a clue as to what exactly is it that you need to do? When they talk about things like the exchange rate, does that give you a clue on what exactly you will need to do there? So those are things that you just need to be thinking about when you are trying to answer questions that have to do with savings. All right, so following those keywords, let's just then try and answer a question or look at a question and see exactly what this means. Now, 5 years ago, a certain amount of money was invested in a bank. The value of the investment is currently sitting on 200,000, right? So this was 5 years ago. Now, already from here, guys, you need to be thinking about what they want you to do clearly would be you wanting to find what was the original amount, or what was the initial amount, or what was the principal amount if we use the proper terms, right? That was invested such that at this present moment, we then have 200,000 in the bank. Really, who wouldn't want to have 200,000? But then that's besides the point. So the key words here is, this is 5 years ago, meaning the duration of the investment was 5 years. So already we're thinking about, okay, this was 5 years, right? And this investment that we had, which we do not know how much we started it with, it then grew to be 200,000. So the value of A is 200,000. And then we need to be then looking at, in that scenario that I just read now, are they telling us whether this is simple interest or compound interest? No, we do not know. So we need to also investigate further and see what exactly is it that we need to be doing. So let's just have a look at this. So they say, calculate the original amount if the interest rate was 5% per annum, simple interest. You see, now the very big thing here is, now they are telling us that this is simple interest. So already from the previous slide that I had asking you whether you know which formula to use, already here they're saying simple interest at the end. It is giving you an idea now as to which formula is it that you must lean over so that you can answer this question. Now, our big idea, remember, is still simple interest. And then the equation for simple interest that we will need to use to answer that question will be as the one you are seeing on the screen now, which is A is equals to P into 1 plus I multiplied by N, right? Where the A would be the accumulated amount. So this is what the future value is, right? The future value meaning, what is it that we have now? Because according to this question, the now is the future because the investment started 5 years ago. And then the principal value would then be the PV as well, which I can call the present value, which was what the person started with 5 years ago. The interest is the 5%. Now, already, if we look at what is it that we want to do here, remember A is the 200,000. And then since this is simple interest, my formula is going to be A is equals to P into 1 plus I multiplied by N, right? And the big thing that I'm trying to find here is the value of P. How much did I start the investment with so that I get to the 200,000 after 5 years' time? And this was at an interest rate of 5%, so that's 0.05 multiplied by the 5 years, because this was for 5 years. And then we'll just go to our calculator and calculate this. So remember, our amount is 200,000. We're going to divide this with the whole bracket that I have there. Now, I know that most of the time we want to start with brackets. After all, that's what Bodmer says you must do. Start with brackets, go outside the brackets, then you divide, and you multiply, and all of those things. But with financial maths, I must caution you against that. Try by all means to do everything as a collective. Why? Because whenever you are calculating and you start rounding off your answer in the duration or in the process of you calculating, I promise you, your final answer is going to be very different from what the final answer is supposed to be. It might be off by a couple of rands, it might be off by a couple of decimals, but you need to make sure that you do not round off until you get to the final answer. That is a big thing. I promise you, as you are progressing with financial maths, you will see that as soon as you round off, it makes your final answer to be incorrect, because now you are no longer using the original amounts that you are busy getting as you are calculating. Now you are using rounded off answers, which is then a problem. So try not to round off until you get to the final answer. Now, I'm just going to divide with the whole bracket as is. So that's 1 plus 0.05 multiplied by the 5. I close the bracket. then I find my answer. So the investment amount was 160,000. So this was P is equals to 160,000. And then what will you then do from here? You will then say, therefore, the original amount was 160,000. So you will need to conclude because we are talking about money. And remember, the question said, what was the original amount? It is not the same as me just saying calculate. If I say what was the original amount, it means that you need to conclude and tell me that this was the original amount. Now, how long would it then take for an investment of 40,000 to increase by 5,000? Now, let's look at what they're saying. A very beautiful question indeed. Increase by 5,000. What is the 5,000? The 5,000 is the increment of the 40,000. And now what you will need to understand is the 5,000 is a once-off increase. So it means you started your investment with 40,000, and when you take out your investment, you take it out as 45,000. That's what the increase by 5,000 means. And the interest that was given to you was 4.5% per annum, and this was on a simple interest basis. So already I know that it means that my P will already be given there, but the big idea here will be the A value, which must be the 45,000, and then you can then start calculating from there. So please make sure that you understand that. Now, have you thought about, firstly, what equation will I then use on this particular question that I just got now, right? What was the keyword? So if I go back to the question and look at the question, what was the keyword here that tells me which formula to use? That's what you need to be thinking about as you are solving the question, right? And then also, that keyword that we just did now, which equation is it then giving you the right to use according to that keyword? Now, the keyword has been simple interest, which has been the big thing that we've been doing. Now, they want us to find the value of n. So, remember the formula is A. You always start with the formula, guys, please. A is equals to P1 plus I multiplied by n, right? And our big thing here that we are trying to do is to find what the value of n is. That is multiplied by. So we are trying to find what the value of n is. Our value of A we know is 45,000, and the value of P is 40,000, and 1 plus my interest was 4.5, so that makes it 0.045 divided by divided by 100, so I don't really need to include the divide there, and I must multiply this by n. Look at me, I'm already thinking compound interest now. So multiply this by n, which is what we are trying to find. So I'm gonna go back to my calculator. So it's 45,000. So firstly, I will divide both sides by the 40,000 to get rid of it, so that I can only have the bracket on its own. Remember, that's the big idea. The big idea when you are solving is you must get the variable to be on its own. So I'm going to divide this by 40,000, and my answer will be 9/8, right? So you can see this is 1,125. Now, one mistake that we normally make when we get to this is when we get to the calculation, or when we write down our steps, we then write this as 1,13, which is not incorrect, because that's what it is on a rounded off scale. But financial maths does not allow us to round it off. We would need to use it as 1,125 as is. And therefore, I have 1,125 is equals to 1 plus the 0,045 multiplied by n. I don't need the brackets anymore because there is nothing outside the bracket. Then I will subtract 1 on both sides, making this to be 0,125 is equals to 0,045 multiplied by n. Remember, if I'm trying to get the variable on its own and it has a coefficient, I will then need to divide both sides by the coefficient. So let's just quickly do that. Remember, we started first by minusing 1, and that was our answer there. And then you divide this by the 0,045. And that will give us 2,78%, right? So n will actually be 2,78, but we will need to round this off to the nearest, right, so that we get the answer. So my n will then be equals to 3 years, or you can say 2 years and a couple of months after that. That's how long it will take this thing to actually grow there. So that's the big idea there. Now, in all of what we've just done right now, guys, is the main thing that we're looking at is, how do I know which formula to use? What tells me or what informs me to use that formula? What are the keywords? How do I see the keywords? How do I then differentiate between a keyword saying this and a keyword saying that? And also, what exactly is it that that keyword is telling me with respect to the kind of calculation that I need to do? Do I just need to multiply by the interest and get the value, or do I need to actually use an actual formula? So those are the things that you need to be thinking about as you are trying to solve this. But I hope so far you are enjoying and everything is a bit clearer now in terms of what it means to have a savings account or what it means to save. I will be back with some more. Stay tuned. Let's just go to a quick ad break. Hi guys, welcome to the last segment of the show. So far we've been looking at the concept of savings. Guys, it's a big deal. Like honestly, it's a big deal. If you look at our country right now, as young people, we are really wasting money and we are not even paying attention to the news about financial literacy and all of that. So all of this, though, you must understand, and I will keep on saying, does not constitute as financial advice. I am just merely talking about numbers and mathematics, because after all, numbers are ruled by mathematics. So that's all that I'm just trying to do. But really, on a serious note now, you need to understand the concept of saving, because it's such a big idea that people are really not taking seriously. And at a very young age, if we do not take it seriously, I promise you, later on, we're going to suffer those consequences, because then you will not be able to do the things that you wish to do for yourself, just to begin with, and for the people that you care dearly for. So those are the things that you need to be thinking about at this young age, to say, what exactly does it mean to save? Does saving mean that I'm just taking the money, I put it in a piggy bag and I leave it there? Or do I take the money, put it under my mattress and I leave it there? Or each and every cent that I get, I use it to buy myself cold drink, to buy myself nice food and take myself to nice restaurants and all of that? Is that really what it means to have money? Those are the things that you need. And also the last thing now that you really, really need to think about is, what does it mean for you personally? What does it mean to have money? Does it mean having 10,000? Does it mean having 5,000? Does it mean having 2,000? Does it mean having 100,000? What does it mean to have money? Does it mean if you get 10,000 and you spend 10,000, you have money? Or does it mean if you get 10,000 and you spend 8,000, you have money? Does it mean if you get 10 and you spend just 2 and you're left with 8, do you have money? Those are just the conversations you need to start having with yourself more than anything, so that you can make certain decisions with your life. Remember, we said we need a regular plan that we're going to follow regularly so that it makes sense to us personally. Because remember, everything is about you and you alone. And then the people after will then benefit from you if you make personally proper decisions. But now let's look at just the last thing that we're going to look at now. Now we're going to look at what it means to calculate under compound interest, what it means to look at inflation, what it means to also look at things like the exchange rate, because that's what inflation is all about. How does that affect us saving our money? How does the rate of change, how does it affect us saving our money? How does politics, for that matter, because those are the things that affect the state of economy of our country. Things like viruses and diseases, how do those things really affect the money that you have and you're putting aside and you want it to grow? But let's just jump right into it. Now, remember, our big idea is still about growth, and we are looking at patterns under growth. Specifically, we've been looking at simple growth, and now we're going to move on to compound and random growth. Now, a question I have for you just to think about is, Sibongile invests 500 in a fixed deposit account for 5 years. Let's understand. Fixed deposit account means that I am only just holding the 500 and I'm leaving it there for 5 years. And I just want it to grow. That's what it means, right? And then the bank offers to pay her an interest rate of 12.5% per annum, compounded quarterly. Remember, the concept of compounded quarterly means that this is given to her on a quarterly basis in a year for 5 years, right? But she is not getting 12.5% per annum, 12.5% every quarter. No, she is getting a fourth of that. So a quarter of 12.5% every quarter of the year until the investment actually matures. Now, the question wants us to calculate how much money she will have after 5 years. Before we do that, you just need to think about, again, how do you identify what equation to use to answer questions like these? And then what are the keywords? You saw that mainly on this previous question that we have here, the big idea here was this is compounded quarterly, so surely we're talking about compound interest. It was a fixed deposit, so this person only made one deposit and they left it like that. So it might be they saved up for a year and then decided to go and invest. Because remember, there's a difference between saving and investing. And then this, we just said now, it links to compound growth, which is the big thing. And the formula for compound growth is actually, as you can see it on the board, and we've been stressing this enough, so I'm sure by now it can now ring a bell in your brain that you don't even need to go to your textbook to look at what the formula is. Now you must be knowing this formula. Anyways, the formula is A is equals to P into 1 plus I to the exponent of n. And this represents the value of A would be the accumulated amount. Remember, I said we can even look at it as the future value. So how much will Sibongile have in the future? If her present value was 500 rands and she was being given the interest of 12.5% per annum compounded quarterly, and this investment was for 5 years. So that's what you really need to be thinking about when you're trying to solve this question. So going back to the question that we actually do need to answer now is the initial amount that Sibongile started with is 500, excuse me, and this was a fixed deposit account, and this was for a duration of what? 5 years. The bank decided to say, we're going to give you an interest rate of 12.5%. Really, I would really be happy if I was to get 12.5% per annum on my investment, because it means, hey, after 5 years, I might be rich, but we will just see in terms of our calculation. And this was compounded quarterly. Now let's see how we will calculate what Sibongile will have after 5 years. So as you can see, the main thing that I always start with is to write down my data to show you what is it that we are talking about. Guys, it is really important because you're going to misplace certain values when you are thinking just, I will just wing it and I will just substitute. Just try to write down your data so that you know what is what when you are substituting. So our formula is A is equals to P into 1 plus I to the exponent of N. We want to know the future value, which is the value of A, but the initial amount that Sibongile invested was 500 rands, and this was at an interest of 12%, which is 0.125, but this was compounded quarterly, so it was divided by 4 because then she got the interest 4 times in a year, but it must amount to the 12.5. And this, she got it for 5 years, but in each year she got it 4 times. So if you look at what I've just substituted now, guys, is the 5 times 4 there, it means that for the first year, Sibongile got the interest 4 times. For the second year, she got it 4 times again. For the third year, 4 times, like that. So in total, she actually got the interest 20 times. Not that she got the 12.5% 20 times. No, understand me. She got the interest 20 times, but the interest was a quarter of the 12.5%, which was per annum. So each and every year, after getting it 4 times, when they add the interest that we've actually given Sibongile, it must always amount to the 12.5. At times you will see later on in your schooling career, when you do financial math, you will see that it might be a bit different when we compare what the bank said we're going to give you and what they actually gave you because of the compounding period. But that's something we're going to be looking at a later stage if you pursue your maths and go forward with it. Now let's calculate this. So I'm just going to go to my calculator here. The initial amount is 500 rands, and this was invested at a rate of 12%, 12.5 that is. So it's 0.125 divided by 4 because it was compounded quarterly, and it was to the exponent of 20 because 5 times 4 is 20. Hopefully my math is still intact. Now, Sibongile actually got 925 and 23 cents, right? So this was 925 and 23 cents. And that's how much Sibongile had. Now, I always get questions like, if it is maybe comma 2, do I just write comma 2 and leave it there or not? Please, don't ever write just comma 2. If it's comma 2 and there is no number after the 2, you must include that 0 when you are writing it. Because we're talking South African rands here, and South African rands, after a comma, we talk about cents. So cents, if it's 2, it means it's 20 cents. It's not like under normal mathematics, under normal numbers where we say after the comma, you don't call it as a number, you call them as individual digits. No. Here, you will say 20 cents because this is money. In money, I can't say this person got 200 rands, comma 5. What does that mean? You see, it will be 200 rands and 50 cents. So the 0 is very important for you to include. Please do think about those. Now, another question, we have Prajay here, which is Joseph. Invest 18,000 and it grows to 25,000 over a period of 2 years. How great would this be, guys? I'm getting 7,000 more in 2 years. I want to be Joseph, definitely. Calculate the interest rate to 1 decimal place if the investment and compound interest. Now I will verify something here, guys. you know, one of the things that you guys stress me with is you don't listen to the instructions, and then when we then mark you wrong, we then look like the bad people. But please, if I give you an instruction that I want it to be to 1 decimal place, it must be to 1 decimal place. And remember, this is an interest rate. It's not about money. Money, I will never say to you, round off to 1 decimal place. No, you will always need to round off to 2 decimal places. So please look at the instructions and listen to the instructions. Remember, the 18,000 is the P value and the 25,000 is the A value. And then I'm still asking you the very same thing. Since the question is like that, what does it mean for us? What are the keywords? What formula must we use? See, so you think about those things as you are trying to solve the question. So remember that they said this person got the interest that was calculated as compound interest. So that's our big idea, or that's our key word. So this is A is equals to P, 1 plus I to the exponent of n. I'm looking for the value of I there. And then my A we know is 25,000 is equals to 18,000. And this is 1 plus I, which I do not know, and this was for 2 years. Honestly, I really wish to be like Joseph, because if I can have 18,000 and I hold it in the bank just now and it gives me 25,000 after 2 years, yay, I can go to that bank running, I promise you. So remember the big idea here, we said you don't round off until you get to the final answer. So I will just do everything on the calculator here and just write down the values accordingly. So we're going to divide this by 18,000 and it gives me that. And then from there, since I want to remove that 2 there, I will take a square root on both sides. So it will be the square root of my answer, which will give me that. But you can see it's a very long number. So that's why I always say, try not to write them down. Just try and use your calculator so that you don't round off things. And then I will need to subtract 1 on both sides. And then that is what I'm going to get. I will multiply this by 100 to get it to be a percentage. Then it becomes 17,9. Remember, round off to 1 decimal place. So this I will then be 17,9%. Now, with random growth, let's just quickly run through it. These are real-world scenarios that do not always follow a pattern. So remember the exchange rate, inflation, and all that. And then changes cannot always be predicted. So you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. There is no formula to calculate that. Then the change can be uncertain and volatile, meaning the change cannot really always be what we want. It can be something completely different from what we want. And then mathematical models normally look at trends and cycles of what this means. And then an example of a random growth is for a foreign exchange, which is the international trade. It's normally in US dollars, and this normally talks about the cost of buying $1, which gives you an indication of how strong the currency would be at the time. Remember, the South African rand at times it's 16 rands to $1, or 17 rands to $1, or it has even gone down to being like 15 rands $1. You see, those are the things you need to look at. Also, you look at different time periods to look at what exactly the overall picture is. And then remember, it repeats in cycles. The inflation, the one perfect example is bread, guys. We bought bread for 10 rands a few years ago, and now we can be buying bread for like 20 rands. And you know, years to come, it will be like 30 rands to buy bread. So those are things you need to be thinking about, the rate at which those goods and services are increasing. And then I ask you now, how do you compare growth when saving your money? How do you then look at, is it better to get a constant amount every year, or is it better to get interest on interest, and that's compound growth? Now, these are the questions I want you to be thinking about whenever you have money. How do you compare your growth? Is it just going to be, I have 10,000, let me just go anywhere and save my money, or do I do comparison? My comparisons, do they involve me saying, I just want to get 100 Rand every year for 5 years? Or is it saying, I want to get 10% of what I have at the end of that year every time, and that's compound growth? Guys, I hope you've learned a lot, because I've really enjoyed doing this, because savings is a very big thing in our country, and it's something that we definitely need to make sure that we master. It's all about numbers, because remember, mathematics is food for the soul. Until next time.